Imagine waking up one morning, adrift on the vast Pacific Ocean. The sun is relentless, beating down on you. Waves stretch endlessly in every direction. And then, the unimaginable hits. The boat you spent months preparing, dreaming about, is gone. This was the reality for Maurice and Maralyn Bailey, a British couple in search of freedom, adventure, and a life lived on their own terms. What started as a dream turned into a fight for survival, unlike anything most of us could ever comprehend. Alone, exposed, and at the mercy of the open sea, they had to rely on nothing but courage, ingenuity, and each other to survive. Maurice Bailey was 40, a man who truly loved the sea. Maralyn, 31, equally adventurous, had been by his side for a decade. Together, they sold their home in England, bought a 31-foot yacht called Orlin, and set sail from Southampton, chasing a dream, New Zealand. They had no fancy gadgets, no emergency beacons, just a compass, a few maps, and an unwavering determination. Their journey was meant to be a life of freedom, adventure, and love, drifting across the endless ocean. But the ocean had other plans. One March morning in 1973, as they sailed through the Pacific, a whale suddenly appeared out of nowhere. With unimaginable force, it struck Orlin, tearing a gaping hole in the hull. Water poured in instantly. Panic set in, but there was no time to dwell. Only action. Within minutes, Maurice and Maralyn were in a tiny inflatable life raft, clutching whatever supplies they could grab. A few rations, a survival manual, a water desalinator, and a small solar still. Their beautiful yacht, their dream, their home, was gone, swallowed by the endless sea, leaving them utterly alone, adrift on the vast, unforgiving Pacific. The first days on the raft were the hardest. They drifted endlessly across the open ocean, completely alone, with nothing but the sky above and the waves around them. Every sunrise brought a fragile mix of hope and fear. There was no radio, no emergency beacon, and no one knew where they were. Every choice, every movement could mean the difference between life and death. Water became their first relentless challenge. They had only a small desalinator and a tiny solar still, enough for just a few precious cups at a time. Every drop mattered. Whenever storms passed, they carefully collected rainwater, making sure not a single sip went to waste. Food quickly became their next battle. They survived on raw fish, caught with improvised hooks and lines, turtles they managed to spear, and the occasional seabird. Every meal was a gamble, a test of skill, patience, and sheer will. Storms and the relentless sun battered their fragile raft, threatening the little shelter they had. Maralyn's hands were never still, sowing tears, patching holes, over and over, day after day. Her determination was as vital to their survival as the fish they caught or the rainwater they carefully saved. Without her relentless effort, they might not have lasted even this long. Every night brought new fears. Sharks circled beneath them, their eyes glinting in the moonlight. Sleep was a luxury they could hardly afford. Someone always had to stay alert. Illness and blisters took hold, muscles cramped, joints ached, and the sun scorched their skin raw. They learned quickly that survival wasn't just about finding food or water. It was about staying sane, holding on to hope, and relying on each other every single minute. In the vast, unforgiving ocean, their bond became as vital as any lifeline. In those first weeks, the ocean tested them like never before. Yet Maurice and Maralyn refused to give in. Every wave that tossed their tiny raft, every gust of wind that threatened to sweep them away, every blistered hand served as a reminder. Survival depended on determination, on holding tightly to each other, and on refusing to let fear take over. As the days stretched into weeks, and the weeks into months, the endless drift began to wear them down. Their bodies grew weak, thin from lack of proper nutrition, and every movement became a struggle. Sunburned, blistered, and exhausted, Maurice and Maralyn endured the harsh punishment of the Pacific in silence, each quietly measuring the passage of time by the rhythm of the waves and the fading light of each sunset. Storms came often, fierce and unforgiving. One moment the sun would shine warmly, the next, monstrous waves would toss their tiny raft like a toy. They clung to its sides for hours, bracing against the ocean's fury. Sleep was a rare luxury. With every roll of the waves, they were reminded just how small and fragile they truly were in the face of the vast, relentless sea. Hunger became a constant companion. Their rations dwindled, leaving them to rely entirely on whatever the sea could provide. Raw fish, turtles, and seabirds weren't just meals. They were survival. Maurice improvised hooks from safety pins, while Maralyn, with careful precision, cleaned and prepared whatever they caught. Every meal became an act of hope, a small victory against the vast, indifferent ocean. But the challenges weren't just physical. Isolation played cruel tricks on their minds. Days blurred into nights. Shadows seemed to move, to watch them. Every splash, every distant sound made their hearts race. They clung to memories of home, family, and each other, the only anchors keeping despair at bay in the endless, lonely sea. Yet, through it all, they never gave up. Maralyn worked tirelessly, fixing the raft again and again to keep it afloat. Maurice, calm and steady, kept their fear at bay. They talked constantly, shared stories, and celebrated every little victory. A turtle caught, a rainstorm that filled their water, a day survived without injury. Each small success reminded them that survival wasn't about luck. It was about endurance, creativity, and above all, love. By now, they had been adrift for over 3 months. The sun had bleached everything, their clothes, their raft, even their spirits at times. Yet, they never stopped looking forward. Every morning, Maurice scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of a ship. Every evening, Maralyn carefully tended their solar still, making sure there was just enough water to keep them going. Over time, they had become part of the ocean, its rhythm, its dangers, and its quiet, endless beauty. By the 118th day, Maurice and Maralyn were pushed to their limits. Their bodies were thin, sunburned, and bruised. Every movement took enormous effort. Every breath reminded them just how fragile life could be. They had faced storms, sharks, hunger, dehydration, and endless isolation. Yet somehow, against all odds, they were still alive. And then on the horizon, a shape appeared, a ship. Hope surged through them. They waved frantically, shouted, doing everything they could to be seen. The vessel, a South Korean fishing boat named Waeolmi 306, slowly drew closer. Rescue was finally within reach. They were lifted aboard, weak and exhausted, but alive. After 118 days adrift in the Pacific Ocean, their ordeal had finally come to an end.